So this, as we know, is the first of these last 4 Shabbatot in which I'll be leading and giving the Drashah. So the season of June will feel a little bit different. We're not doing exactly the same things. We got to be flexible here, right? And through the month of June, so many different things will be happening that I know so many of you know about. But we begin tonight the book of Numbers, Bamidbar. It's the 4th of the 5 books of our Chumash, of our 5 books of Moses. And the title itself means in the desert, in the wilderness, in the galus, in the outside of whatever we imagine will be. So it feels in so many ways appropriate that we're starting this book in this month of June as we are, and time is barreling us forward into these moments of Bein Hashmashot that I discussed on Yom Kippur. But Bamidbar is all about the Israelites' time in the desert. They've left the book of Genesis, they've left the book of Exodus with the time in Egypt, and this book is entirely taking place in the desert, with the slavery behind them, with the total unknown ahead of them. Now, I'm not saying that the 32 years with me was slavery for you or for me. I just realized that that metaphor doesn't work so well. I'll take that back. But the Israelites, the Israelites didn't know what was ahead of them. And in many ways, most of the 5 books of Moses, in one way or another, take place in this confusing, uncertain, unbalanced time. And I keep saying that to myself and to all of us, to remember that this unbalanced, uncertain, confusing sense of feeling a little lost is very deep in our spiritual tradition and very much a part of who we are as a people. And we embrace the journey. We understand that the Bible doesn't end with us getting to whatever the promised land might be. We're on the edge, and then we go back to the beginning. The book of Devarim, which is the final book, ends with the word Yisrael, which means us, the people, with the letter Lamed. And the book of Bereshit, Genesis, begins with the word Bereshit with the letter Bet. So the commentaries love to talk about the cycle of these 5 books rather than the linearness of them. So the last letter of the final book and the first letter of the first book spell the word Lev, which is 32, heart or 32. And a lot of commentators talk about the role of heart in Jewish tradition. And as we're studying in the Psalms class, I don't want to give away too much because we haven't gotten there exactly, but Lev is used in different ways in the biblical language. It's used to mean what we call heart, and so the source of maybe emotions, but it's also used in the biblical times to mean conscience or intellect or how we understand the world. The biblical language doesn't have the division between heart and mind that we tend to use either both in language or maybe science. I don't know exactly. But in the Bible, the word lev has an understanding that you have, and the way I love to see it is that you have to have the heart to be able to have an intellectual life. You have to be able to have those things combined in order to really understand who you are, what the world is, and who you are in the world. The ability to combine both heart and mind, soul, that's what the word lev does. And if you look at it in different locations throughout the Bible and the Tanakh entirely, you see it's used in these very different ways. In this time, when we're beginning the book of Bamidbar, remember starting Bereshit? That was a long time ago. That was October 7th we began the book of Bereshit to put us in a location of time and of what this year has been. We began the reading of Bereshit on October 7th. We're now 4 books, starting the 4th book, and we're on close to the end of the counting of the Omer. And the Omer, if the 5 books of Moses are about being in the desert and being in the wilderness and not being arrived at someplace, not having left but not yet arrived, the Omer is like a super soaker experience of that. We have left Pesach, but we have not arrived at Shavuot. And Pesach is the embodiment of celebrating the escape from physical slavery and about to emerge into the desert. The Israelites don't yet know it's going to be another 38, 39 years. And they approach Shavuot, which happens this Tuesday night. So we're getting very close to the end of this time and arriving at Shavuot. And I think it's so incredibly significant to me that Shavuot is happening in June this year, because we're so late. Some of you were at this event we had on Monday night. I imagine some of you were there. And there'll be more to say about that in these weeks. But one of the things that I found so profound about the experience of being there is that the event itself, created by this amazing program group at CBST, led by the fabulous Barbara Gaines as producer, who cast her vision on everything, and along with Joyce and the Cantor, and with Rabbi James and Rabbi Werber, and with Adria Benjamin, really crafted the content. And I was not a part of it. I was asked various questions along the way. But what they created in the program itself absolutely reflects what I believe Shavuot itself is about, and this time is about, which is ultimately one word, and that word is revelation. How do we experience the divine in this universe? How do we experience the power in the universe which is responsible for us? How are we aware of there's power in the universe that nourishes us? Even if you don't like the word God or the concept God, that's totally fine with me. How do you get to a place where something feeds you so much that you are transformed, that you are opened up, that you start seeing things a little bit differently, that you start experiencing the world on a different level than your day-to-dayness? Revelation is about being open to that level of the truth of the universe in which we are in. Shavuot might be the most misunderstood and least known of the major holidays, and it is a major holiday among American Jews because it doesn't have a lot of tactile to it. It doesn't have the lulav and the etrog of Sukkot. It doesn't have the shofar. It doesn't have a seder. It doesn't have a Sukkot of Sukkot. It is all about a concept. And that concept is arriving at Sinai. So the question is, what is your Sinai? And being opened up to new or deeper or more profound ways of looking at yourself and at the world. And we modern people are not into that, right? We want to go through our to-do lists, our apps that organize our work projects. We feel very good if we know exactly what we've done and what we haven't done. We as a society are extremely focused on doing stuff. Feeling bad about not doing enough, feeling good about getting stuff done, feeling good about making sure our lists are very complete. And Shavuot is countercultural because it is about nothing except being open. What is revelation? The understanding that there's some truths that are there in the universe that we have to pause long enough to accept them into us. Now, I have a lot to say about that, and you've heard me over the years talk about it, but this moment feels particularly poignant and rich in that way. Because the question over and over that Shavuot poses, and therefore life poses, which is, what do you need to be the complete person, I'll use the word, you don't have to use it, God intended you to be? What's holding you back? What are the pieces that are not working in your life? And this is not about to-do lists. This is not about what job you're doing, although sometimes it has an implication to it. It's how do we open ourselves up to deep truths in the universe that end up transforming us? For me, one of the primary ways to do that is prayer. And that's why it was so important to me to work on CBST having a new prayer book. And I'm very proud of what I think is kind of a book department, a book publishing department at CBST. And were I at the annual meeting last night, I would have talked about how that happened, but I wasn't there. I was in the doggy ER. And CBST, when I arrived at CBST, was using this Siddur. Some of you might remember it with the old thesis cover. You know what a thesis cover is up there? No, everybody's saying no. So a thesis cover is when you wrote a PhD or a master's thesis. There was this book that bends out, so you can put whatever size in there. You see that? Oh, this side of the room knows what it is. I'll do it over here. Okay, so this is a thesis, and you would buy this if you wrote a master's degree or a PhD, and you would put it in there, close it, and whoop. So the genius of the Siddur editors of this generation, and this Siddur was published in 1981, and it says, with all your heart, b'chol levavcha, Congregation Beit Simchat Torah, the Gay Synagogue of New York, 1981. And a Siddur is one of the best ways to know what the values are of the community which produced it. A Siddur tells you everything you need to know. I go into any synagogue, I pick up the Siddur that synagogue is using, and I know everything about who that synagogue is. And if they've produced their own Siddur, as we did, there is so much about who we are. But this Siddur, done in 1981, they made the decision to use this thesis cover because they had the idea that a Siddur should be always changing. Pages theoretically could be taken out, pages could be added, that the idea was that a prayer book should not be static. And they actually left page numbers, and some of you remember, some of the pages go from 109 to 150, so that if you just wanted to add the pages, you could do that. This was a profound document of the intention, the belief system, the values of CBST for all those years. And we didn't want to totally change it at first. We just wanted to add the things that had become who CBST was. And that's where, in 2007, what's 10 years before 2007? 1997, thank you. In 1997, we created a group to do a new CBST Siddur. It took us 10 years, and then we produced this Siddur, which is a paperback version of what you have in your hand, so that who remembers the paperback version? You guys remember the paperback version? So that we could use it for a year to try it on, kind of like to test drive before we actually invested in the more expensive print version in the hard copy. And this became our Siddur for a year. Because I believe deeply that the Siddur needed to reflect who we were as a community and not just be my ideas or Rabbi Cohen's ideas, we were the primary editors of it. And then after the year, this was published with Marcia Melnick and Susan Meyer as the publishers, really, of it, and along with Yehuda Berger and Jack Greenberg. And this Siddur we started using in 2008. So that's however many years that is. I don't have time tonight, of course, to talk about what makes it our Siddur. I want to talk about just this issue of revelation. Prayer is the hardest thing for non-Orthodox modern Jews to relate to. Everybody can relate to the Pesach Seder, maybe even building a sukkah, or maybe even Kiddush after services. It was my dream for CBST, and one of the things about which I feel so deeply gratified was to make the prayer life at CBST as important as any other aspect of the synagogue. To make sure, because I believe that prayer is at the center of both an experience of revelation, but also an experience of being able to create in the world the vision of the world as we want it to be, in partnership with understanding the key part of revelation is understanding that we are not ultimately in charge, that there's a power in the universe much bigger than any of us. And that power is there for us to drink from, to be strengthened by, to be nourished by, and yes, to experience revelation. Revelation is not always easy to understand unless, and I've said this in past years, and I'm going to say it now as a gift for your futures, each of you in your own lives. Think about a moment in your life where you all of a sudden understood something that you hadn't gotten. Maybe it was even coming out to yourself. Maybe it was understanding that a particular job trajectory was the wrong one. Maybe it was understanding, you know what? You really don't like to eat lentils. It could be very mundane, but something occurs to you. Does everybody know what I mean? Or you just all of a sudden understand something that gives you access to a part of you that 3 minutes earlier, 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier, you don't recognize. What prayer does is connect us to the activity to help us be more open. It reminds us aspirationally of the values we have, even in a world which hasn't achieved it. And it reminds us over and over and over again of the power of community in prayer. Because yes, we Jews can pray alone, and many of us do, but prayer in community is at a higher value. So what does it mean that revelation itself at Sinai wasn't an individual experience alone? It happened in community. And this comes to something that I experienced on Monday night, and I brought when I came here in 1992, which is, I don't worry about God so much. I believe if we create a powerful community in which people can experience something like praying together in ways that are powerful and life-changing and includes a lot of great music, because music is often that access point, as the Psalms tell us over and over again, including the Psalm for Shabbat, is full of the significance and importance that if you want to experience revelation, if you want to experience God, if you want to have an experience of something beyond yourself and you don't know how to do it, start with music in community. It can be, and I've never had the pleasure or the gift of this, of singing in a chorus or playing in an orchestra. That's an example of you can achieve things that you don't on your own. It could be being in the audience of an orchestra or a great musical performance. But very powerfully, it's about singing together. So it's both these things. So one of the deepest prayers, and I will continue for the rest of my life praying for CBST, and I ask all of you to keep me in your prayers, because prayer matters. Music matters. Coming together as a community matters. And never forget that our job is to keep ourselves open enough, soft enough, prepared enough for new truth to be able to be present when it arrives. Shavuot acknowledges those times and says to us, God is waiting. Come to this holy place, Moses is told when he approaches his sneh, his Sinai. Take off your shoes because you're standing on a holy place. But what makes it holy? It wasn't holy before. It was holy because Moses said, I'm ready to be transformed by the experience of prayer and God and revelation. Each of us will do it differently, but I have had the incredible privilege of sitting with many of you in different moments. I haven't used that language, but I've heard you use that language of learning something new that's transformed the way you see yourself. And I particularly want to do a shout out to those of you who have struggled with addictions of all different kinds and have moved into a different place. That is an experience of profound revelation, of believing in yourself enough to know that that addiction is not necessary for you to be the human being you are meant to be. That's a Sinai experience. So I will continue to pray for each of you to keep having your sneh and your Sinai experiences. And on this Shavuot, we'll be at the night, why are we going to? The JCC on the Upper West Side to experience it with 3,000 other people. But I pray for all of you to be open to the moments of revelation and of prayer, to be able to focus on softening the parts of you that are so hardened and so crushed by the suffering in our lives and in the world, to be prepared to be surprised, to be prepared to be energized by something new, to know the person next to you has been put there by God for a reason, and you have a simple job. Figure it out. I'm going to pray for each of you and for this community, because it has shaped me as I know it has shaped so many of you. And Monday night's combination of things was absolutely a once-in-a-lifetime experience of Sinai. Shabbat Shalom.